Hi, this is Chris over at Code 504. What we're going to show you today is a video on stretching or extending a frame. It seems like a lot of people have been asking us questions. Not everybody's got a chance to have a jig in their garage. So we're going to kind of pull together some stuff that we know is going to work for you, that you can actually gather up at the same time. You could take and do this at home. So right now this frame here is a standard cab short bed, 108-inch wheelbase. We're going to be using them for different projects. We're going to extend this out to 114-inch. Now, whatever you decide that you need to do for your project, you're going to be able to take that wheelbase, and if it's 108 or if it's 123, and shorten it. We're going to try to talk about that in this video to kind of let you know a little bit what you're going to need to do. Some of the stuff that you're going to need is very simple. Most guys will end up having it right there at home. You may have to go down to a metal shop, pick up some extra tubing. We're going to kind of show you how you can build a few things and what you can do with it to make it all work and be functional for you. So one of the first things that you're going to want to do is you're going to need to have something in between the frames, so when you do make the cuts, if the frame itself doesn't spread out. So what we've actually done, we just took some 1-inch square tubing and then used just a 1/2-inch nut. And by doing this, we've actually just welded it, and I'll take this back out. And we've just welded the nut right inside the tubing. Okay, you'll do that on both ends. After you've measured from the inside of the frame, from side to side, you'll know what that distance is, and then you'll be able to put the nuts in and weld them. Once this is installed in it, you'll have two of them. One in front of the cut, and you're going to have one in back of the cut. Again, these are actually going to do nothing more than keep the frame from trying to spread apart. The other thing you might want to pick up is maybe some 1/2-inch. Well, actually this is 3/4, or maybe some 1-inch square tubing. Whatever's the cheapest or what you can find. And you're going to end up welding a couple of these onto the frame, the top of the frame. By doing that in certain areas, and we'll show you where to put them at here later on. But by doing that, it's actually going to take the frame and keep it from trying to spread itself out. After you cut it, it's going to try to move around. These little girls, over the years, have had some abuse, and they've been kind of twisted and tweaked around. So we're going to help you kind of prevent that from happening, and then be able to talk about a little bit later on where we're putting it on and doing the measurements. The other thing we always tell you, you're going to need a couple of 2x4s, or maybe about 4 of them or so. And what you're going to want to do there is just use them as chocks. Anybody should have these around the house. Put them in front of the tires, front and back, so that your chassis doesn't move around on you. Later on, as we make that cut, before you do it, you're going to need something for legs to keep this thing from actually, when you make the cut, and dropping down and preventing anybody getting injured, or at the same time making it easier for you. So what we did is we just went out and got some 2-inch square tubing, found some old scrap pieces. We actually welded them onto the bottom as like a little foot pad. So it allows that frame to be able to slide either direction that you're needing to very easily, instead of being something that's going to maybe bite into your flooring, your concrete, or something like this. So one of the things I want to talk about too is when you first move your chassis into your garage or your shop, most of the time the concrete's going to be fairly level. The biggest thing about remembering all this is when you're doing a chassis, as far as doing a stretch or a shortening, make sure all your tires, even though they're donor tires, make sure they're all the same size of tire, okay? Now, like these tires here, they're mismatched, but they're the same size. But when we went ahead and we put about 30 pounds of air pressure in them, so we know that everything's going to be the same, the chassis should be fairly level, and that's going to help you out. So the other thing you got to remember too is when you start making your measurements and you're getting ready to cut for whatever application you're doing, never go off of the ball joint, or maybe if you think, hey, I got the tire straight, that's a bad place to measure from. So you always want a hard measurement to be able to go back to. A lot of times what we'll end up doing is we'll use the top of the shock mount, and then by doing this, we'll be able to take that tape measure, put it right over top of it, and we'll be able to pull that back to another measurement in the back. Now, factory holes in these things, there's a lot of them in the top. These are the smaller ones are actually what they call line-up holes from the factory. So we're going to take a little bit of time here. We're going to take and we're going to drill one of these holes open using a 5/16 bolt, something about 1 inch, maybe 1.5 inches tall. We're going to run it from the bottom side, put a nut on it so it always stays there all the time. So we're going to do it on both sides. So when you get done measuring, that actual measurement you're going to take that, whatever it comes up to, X, Y, Z, and you say, okay, like our application is going to be a 1/14, so we're going to be putting 6 inches into it. So I'm going to take this measurement and I'm going to add 6 inches, and when I get done cutting and extending this, it should come out to that measurement. Same thing is going to be done if you're taking and you want to shorten up a frame, if you're using like a 1/18 or maybe you're using a 1/23. It's going to be the same application. You always got a hard mount to go back to. You'll make the cut, take out what you want, and be able to put it back together. We'll show you how to do some clamping and using some angle iron so that action can be done very easily. And then you measure it. Once you get this measurement all the time, you've got something to go back to. So we just got done tightening up and kind of putting in our cross braces at the same time. Meanwhile, we were talking about taking one of the factory holes and just opening it up and actually using a 5/16 bolt. By doing that, like I was talking about earlier, you're going to be able to take that measurement and always go back to hooking a tape measure and running this down to your shock stud. What we always do is just go on the outside. Don't worry about trying to find the center of the bolts. It's easier to go outside to outside, so you can always have that measurement. You got a good hard reference point to go back to. So we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. I went ahead and I put in our 2 square tubings that we made up, and I took and we just found some factory holes in it that we used 1/2 inch bolts. Kind of put it in front and behind the cut line that's going to end up being. So next thing you're going to want to do is, there's a couple of things that you can use. I like to use a Sharpie because you get a little bit finer tip as far as being able to mark your line. Some guys will like to use soapstone, which is either one will work good. But what you want to do is from the factory seam here, where it's put together, you want to actually make a mark, and you want to put that on that seam, and you want to go back here and you want to make a mark on your chassis at 10 inches. Okay, so that's where you're going to make your cut line. You can take a scribe, or not a scribe, but a square, and you're actually going to put that in there and you're going to make your mark. And you're going to want to continue to do that all the way down the top, all the way down to the sides. And again across on the bottom. This will actually be done on both sides of the chassis. So that will actually get you to the point where you're going to be almost ready to start cutting. But you got a good hard line to be able to look at. What we've actually done now, we took a little bit of time. With them doing a little bit of editing, we make it a little bit quicker. We went ahead and put in our cross brace like we talked about. Now, I went ahead and we measured from the shock mount itself again, back to our bolt over here that we actually drilled and put in. Now, that measurement right there came up to 103 3/8. So I'm just going to write it on the frame itself so I don't ever forget it. Then I have to look at it all the time. So, again, this frame is being used for a different application later down the road. So whatever your measurement's going to end up being, you're going to find out that we're going to make our cut. We know we've got to put 6 inches in to make it a 114-inch wheelbase. So if we end up doing 6 inches to it, we should come out 109 3/8. If you're off within about a 1/16, maybe a weak eighth, don't panic about it. Sometimes when you're making your cuts, you're going to, the blade's going to turn a little bit on it. It's always adjustable. Plus, as far as wheelbase, being off a little bit like that is not going to hurt you. So what we're going to end up doing there is you're going to need a couple extra pieces. Like we talked about, having a 2-inch square tubing with a feed on it. We're going to actually put 2 per side. You're going to put them behind your cuts. You're going to put it up against the frame. Now these are actually going to be tack welded into place, but you want to make sure you got plenty of room here so your angle iron, that we're going to talk about in a little bit, is going to be able to use as a slide to help you out. But you don't want to run into anything that's going to end up giving you a problem. So you're going to put one back here someplace, and you're going to put another one up towards the front. Tack weld those on because you will be cutting them off, but this is going to prevent the frame from dropping on you after you cut, and it's easier for you to be able to line itself up. The angle iron we were talking about, we just went down and bought a large chunk of it here. It's just a 3x3, so you may have been having to cut it down some of it more. The big thing about it is when you put it up on the bottom here, you don't want to overlap onto where the frame is butted together from the factory. And then whatever size of angle iron you're going to get, you're going to make sure that you're cut off short enough, or if you maybe have to notch out a little bit to clear your bolts, you're going to be able to do this. This will actually be spot welded on one side of the frame after it's cut, but you're going to use the other side with clamps. So you're allowing the frame to slide on the angle iron, making it easier to move. What we're going to do is we're going to actually do some cutting here, and after that we're going to be getting back with you and showing you what we got.
Okay, so we're going to be back on our chassis now, and we've got to a point where you're just about ready to start doing some cutting, but we're going to kind of recap real quick on what we actually did to get to this point. We put some cross tubing in here from side to side. Just use that 1 inch we talked about, welding a 1/2 inch nut on the ends. We pulled the 2 of those in and used some factory holes in it. Now on the top, we just grabbed some 3/4 inch square tubing, cut it to length, welded them on the top, kind of out of our way so we have plenty of room to do our cuts. By doing this, it just actually takes the top of the frame and keeps the ears from trying to spread itself out. So when you do line things back up or you're going to extend it, it's actually going to work a lot better for you. These legs that you're seeing we talked about earlier, these actually, we just let the chassis set on the ground, kind of in neutral or wherever it's comfortable. And then we just put them down to the side of it. We did a little spot welding on each side of it, all 4 corners, just to help us so that when we do make our cut, the frame doesn't drop on us, and then be able to move it back and forth. Now, we talked about earlier about some rectangular tubing, using it for that if you wanted to, but we used some angle iron here on the side. We went and bought some 3x3, kind of held it up for, we noticed that we needed to do some notching, so we actually did some marking, did some notching into it. And what that's going to end up doing is you're going to clamp on one end of it, but the other end of it, like in this closest to the front, you're going to actually do a little grinding there, do some spot welding, so that doesn't move on you. But before you do that spot welding, you're going to need to clamp this very tightly to the frame, and that's going to become your slide that's going to help you. And you'll see how that's done a little bit later. Again, from the factory weld that we actually had when the factory put it together, we moved back 10 inches, made our marks, ran across the top all the way down the bottom. Again, we know we're going to be using this project for something later on. So we're only going to go to a 114 inch wheelbase. Again, we actually went from the shock mount here, and then we actually just picked a factory hole. We just oversized it a little bit, put a 5/16 bolt into it, and we measured that out just by hooking the tape measure over top of here and pulling it tight up to the front. And then that came out to 103 3/8. So this measurement right now, we don't care what the wheelbase is doing. We know we have a hard mark we can go back to. We're going to put 6 inches into it, and it should come out to 109 3/8. So what we're going to do is, before we start cutting, every time you do working on your vehicle, we always stress that you make sure you take care of yourself and safety first. So you always want to have a set goggles. You're going to have some good gloves. I like to use the thicker gloves in case that something bounces around on you, whatever. You got a little bit more cushion. You get some of these gloves that are really tight to your fingers. A cutoff wheel or something will bite into it. You're probably still going to get cut. So get yourself something a little bit loose and at the same time a little bit thicker. Now, when it comes to the cutting part of it, we're just using our DeWalt. This one's set up. I got a 5-inch disc onto it, so that I can actually watch over top of what I'm doing when I'm cutting. The 5-inch disc is plenty, so I don't have to worry about not getting through the metal or anything. So that's all we're going to be using there. Now, when we start doing our cuts, what we're going to do is we'll start and we'll pierce our cut line. And I'll actually start on the top, and I'll just kind of work its way down here a couple of times. I don't try to take it all out in one shot. Make that line so you got a good straight line, and then mark it across the top. When you do cut through it all the way, cut the roundness of the frame, cut through that portion so that you have a line up on your marks, what you need to do. Now, when you make your cuts on the top and the bottom, I never cut all the way through to the end. What I'll do is I'll leave myself roughly about 1/4 inch here onto the inside of the frame, and I'll make that cut on the bottom and then do the same thing. By doing that, that allows you to go back in and to be able to finish that weld without anything trying to pop or spring on you really tight or fast. Could have a tendency sometimes, these little frames, they got a little twist into them. It may bite into the disc. Stop it. If it is, make sure, don't panic. Just shut it off. Get yourself back out of trouble and then move them back on. Because you will have to put that inner channel in there. We'll kind of show you a little bit later about what's going to happen. Right now, we're going to get busy on this thing, get it all welded up, and we'll give you some more pictures in a little bit. We went ahead and we've got things kind of cut and set. But
again, what we were talking about, this angle iron. Clamp this to the side of the frame so we can keep this thing square side to side, but we use it as a slide. Now, I went ahead and I cut my 6 inches out for our project. Like I said, you make sure you know what you're cutting, whatever that length is going to end up being. Now, the biggest thing about it is when you get done cutting, and you gotta do some grinding, because not everybody's going to cut a perfectly straight line. Don't worry about that. When you get done and it fits really well, take your grinder and do a little bit of bevel to the edges of the metal itself. Just bevel this down about a 30 to 45 degree angle. Don't take a lot of it off, but you want to kind of make a little V mark in there on your frame area at the same time your new pieces you're putting in. By doing that, you're going to fill up your weld and make it even stronger. So we got fitted in there now. We did our measurements. We were right on the money where we needed to be. Again, our measurements start out to be 103 3/8. We put 6 inches in it. We came up to 109 3/8. So now our next step is we're going to do some light tack welding. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll tack the corners here so it doesn't move around on me. And then I'll kind of work it around a little bit so that I know both sides are actually going to be, double check my measurements. If I feel comfortable about it, we'll move on to our gussets. And then we'll show you those in a minute. All right, so we're back on our project again. What we ended up doing was we got all of our welding done, and we did some grinding and got it cleaned up. Now, after we got done welding, we knew that our braces are going to be in the wrong place as far as getting interference and finishing up our grinding. So we went ahead and took everything out. And like I said, everything is welded up and ready to go. So your next step is going to be actually using these gussets that we talked about. And what these are going to do is they're going to go onto the inside of the frame. And you're going to set that, and you're going to split the difference. What I mean by splitting the difference is if you look at the triangle shape on it, you're going to have a set of holes on one side and a set of holes on the other. So if you actually just imagine a line right through here, and then this was the piece we put in. We actually just take it, we just screw it up against here like this, and we're going to use some clamps, and we'll hold that one there and clamp it, and we'll actually put this other one right over here with it as well. What we're going to end up doing then is clamping, like I said, doing the welding, and then we'll actually be able to put those into place. Once those are done and welded, you're going to be able to take that and you're going to be able to weld these holes up after it's clamped in. By doing that, that's going to draw the side of that frame in super tight. And you can always do some welding on the side of this as well on the outside of it. Once both of these are put into place on both sides of your frame, then your last and final step is actually to take this inside channel. Now, this inside channel, you're just going to have to make it fit inside here. You shouldn't have too much problem. It'll go in there. That's what they always make a good old hammer for. You do some light tapping. Once you get it down into where it's just about flush, you'll be just about where this brake line is here from when we bend them. And then that'll give you plenty of material to be able to weld to without having to take all your grind. Then what you're going to be able to do is do your welding. And then when you get done, finish doing your welding to this, it's going to have a little bit of a roll left to it. So then when you take your grinder and do grind and finish up your product, you're not taking off all your weld. We'll get it all welded up and we'll show you what the end result looks like. Okay, we're in the final steps of our frame right now. As you can kind of see, we went ahead when we had it upside down on the sawhorses. We just stripped out the chassis, got to all the other rivets we needed to grind off and get out of the way. So when we was upside down with the frame, we went ahead, we welded up the bottom side, we did all of our grinding, our finishing. So the only thing that's left is actually getting it back up here. After the boxing plates are put in, the inner channel is, we're going to be taking and doing our welding now with this. Now, a lot of times you'll see there's going to be a little bit of a gap in here. As you weld, what you're going to want to do is you want to take a hammer and you're going to want to try to just keep pushing that down, okay? It's not going to hurt anything. Then you'll get nice, good, clean welds. Like I said, this will actually be sticking out. You got plenty of surface here to weld to. So when you do your grinding, you're not going to take off any of your strength of your welds. That's a problem that a lot of guys will take this flat plate, they'll put up against the frame, and they'll weld just that little area. When it's time to get done trying to finish it off, make it look really pretty, they've taken off about 75% of their welds. So all we got to do now is we'll get the welder back over here, we'll get it hooked up, finish welding on both sides of it, go ahead, grind it down, and you're going to be ready to do your paint work or powder coat. Thanks a lot for watching the video. Hope this helped you out.